Welcome back to the deep dive. I think if you're listening to this, you probably share a pretty common and, ambitious desire. You want the very best outcomes for young people, the kind of outcomes we often associate with, say, high private school investment, smaller classes, more individualized attention, and modern high quality facilities. But getting those outcomes for everyone, that takes more than just goodwill. It demands a wholesale system upgrade.
It really does. And today we're looking at a stack of sources that they lay out the practical logistics of actually doing that. This isn't about just tearing down the system. It's about a fundamental modernization, and it focuses on what they call the twin pillars of people and property.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to trace the ripple effect of setting one single, really clear policy goal, reducing the average class size from the current 26.2 pupils down to a much more sustainable and more manageable 20. We're going to unpack how that one decision, that one little change, triggers this massive detailed calculation for staffing, for space, and for capital investment.
And just to give you a sense of the logistical ambition here, that simple shift from 26.2 to 20, it all hinges on two, frankly, staggering requirements. The need for about 120,000 additional classrooms and creating over 320,000 new jobs right across the educational sector. That's the mountain we're climbing today.
Let's start with the people, because when we talk about education, people are always more important than the money, aren't they? I mean, people are the ones who fix reading confidence, they run safeguarding programs, they staff the classes. Before we even touch a spreadsheet, what does moving from, say, 26.2 down to 20 actually mean for a primary school teacher or for a child who's, struggling to concentrate?
Oh, it means everything. At 26 or 27 pupils, a teacher is often just managing behavior and logistics. But at 20, they're actually teaching. It means fewer distractions, much less lost time, and crucially, it gives the teacher the bandwidth to spot a child who's falling behind. Whether that's with reading or, some kind of pastoral issue, it's the difference between feeling completely overwhelmed and feeling effective.
That makes the target of 20 sound not indulgent, but actually necessary. So let's hit the math. We're working with approximately 10 million pupils in the system, right?
Exactly. So if you run the numbers, the current system at 26.2 pupils per class uses around 383,000 classrooms. But if we keep the pupil numbers the same and divide those 10 million by 20, the number of classes you need jumps to about 502,000.
Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. That difference, it's
Yeah.
about 119,000 additional classes. That is a foundational change. We're essentially talking about building a whole new national school system on top of the old one overnight. It really puts the challenge of finding teachers into perspective.
It certainly does. And you can't just hire 119,000 new people. You have to scale up the whole teaching workforce to account for non-teaching time, planning periods, specialist subjects, and of course, the necessary growth in leadership and support.
Sure.
So when you factor all of that in, the total requirement sits at about 175,000 additional qualified teachers.
Wow, that's a 31% expansion in the core teaching workforce. But as you said, it's not just about the person at the front of the classroom. Who else do we need to make this work?
You need the whole support system. Teaching assistants, or TAs, are absolutely vital, both for classroom support and for intervention work. The current employment ratio in the system is around zero point 0.6 TAs for every teacher. So if you maintain that ratio with 175,000 new teachers, well, you need an additional 105,000 new teaching assistants.
And then there's the entire ecosystem that keeps the buildings running and safe, which I think gets overlooked in these conversations all the time.
All the time. Schools are complex places. You need cleaners, caretakers, admin staff, IT technicians, site managers, and this is increasingly important, robust pastoral and safeguarding teams. These operational roles add another 40,000 to 50,000 people to the total.
So if you add the teachers, the TAs, the operational staff, the total job creation it's just staggering. Somewhere between 320,000 and 330,000 new jobs in education. That's huge. But let me just push back for a second. 320,000 jobs. That's a massive recruitment challenge. Are these people actually available in the economy? Or is this just a demand on paper?
It's a fair question, and the sources address it immediately by tying this reform directly into the economy. The proposal is designed to solve a capacity problem in schools, while at the same time tackling the unemployment problem. And what's fascinating is that the high cost of all this is immediately offset, in part, by the jobs it creates. This structural uplift is treated less as an educational expense and more as a, job creation mechanism with a real economic return.
And that engine kicks off by looking at the national unemployment numbers, right? They're currently sitting around 1.8 million people. And we need, over 320,000 new workers?
The analysis makes a pretty moderate assumption. It says if we can get around a 60% uptake from that unemployed group. And you have to remember, many of these roles, like TAs or operational staff, are perfect for people with strong local connections or entry-level skills. Then you'd see about 200,000 people moving out of unemployment and into stable, meaningful work.
Just that one move alone reduces national unemployment by over 10%, which is a huge social and economic gain. But beyond the headline number, what does that actually mean for the budget? How does that translate into financial offsets?
It creates an immediate fiscal boost that helps cushion the reform's price tag. You see two main benefits. First, the reduction in benefits payments to those 200,000 people. That saves the national budget about £2 billion every year.
Yeah.
Second, the extra tax receipts from 320,000 people earning a salary brings in roughly another £2.2 billion annually.
So just through those two things, reduced benefits and increased taxes, we're already looking at an annual offset of between 4 and 4.5 billion.
That's the arithmetic, yes. And look, that doesn't pay for the entire reform. The ongoing costs are immense. But the real power of that offset is that it changes the political argument. It shifts the conversation from how much does this all cost to how much capacity, how much stability, and how much future human capital does this investment actually generate.
It sounds like a circular economy model. You invest in the workforce, that investment creates stability and tax revenue, which then helps fund the stability of the whole system. It also suggests this policy delivers immediate economic wins long before we see the educational outcomes a generation down the line.
Exactly. When you create stable local jobs, and especially those support roles, you build experience and career ladders in communities. And that ultimately feeds back into better outcomes for the kids being taught.
Okay, so we've solved the people problem, at least on paper. Now we hit the physical reality. You can hire 320,000 people, but if you don't have a desk and a safe room for them, the whole thing collapses. We need 119,000 extra classes. Eventually, physics wins, right? You run out of space. And this is all happening against the backdrop of the existing estate crisis.
The current state of the estate is frankly a disgrace. In England, we have about 64,000 school buildings. Their replacement value is estimated at around $220 billion. But years and years of neglect have left this massive asset base just rotting.
I think anyone who's ever been in a UK school staff room can picture it. That annual ritual of buckets under the ceilings, the ancient boilers, that's the visual for why this maintenance budget is so important.
It is. Engineering standards say a healthy budget should be 8 to 11 billion pounds a year. That covers 3% for annual maintenance plus renewal, but current spending is under 2 billion pounds. That huge decade-long gap is exactly why we've had structural failures like the RAC crisis.
For listeners who might not be familiar with that term, could you just quickly explain what RAC is?
Sure. RAAC stands for Reinforced Autoclaved Aerated Concrete. It's kind of lightweight, bubbly concrete used a lot from the 50s to the 90s. It was cheap, but it has a limited lifespan. And now it's starting to fail catastrophically and unexpectedly in thousands of schools, leading to emergency closures. It's the most dangerous, visible consequence of that severe underinvestment we've been talking about.
So we're starting from a deficit. Where on earth do we find 120,000 new classrooms without just building thousands of new schools? The sources suggest a surprising solution, this hidden reserve of mothballed schools.
They're the dead assets of the system. Because of shifting demographics, some schools have closed down. They're still publicly owned, often structurally sound, but they're just left in limbo. Councils are still paying for security, insurance, minimal heating. They're essentially preserving expensive decay.
So they're ready-made infrastructure, just waiting for the kids to come back.
Precisely. The analysis suggests that if we reactivate these sites, we can conservatively cover 30% of the new classroom need. That's 36,000 classrooms brought online almost immediately with minimal capital spending.
That's a huge chunk. But 36,000 classrooms? That still leaves us needing about 84,000 more rooms. That is still the equivalent of building thousands of new schools from scratch. And this is where the planning gets really strategic. The sources start looking at one of the UK's most unexpected educational assets, its vacant commercial space. We have a massive 9.7 million square meters of empty office space just sitting there.
And we only need about 6 million square meters to house the remaining 84,000 classrooms. So the plan is a balanced one. It splits that remaining need equally between commercial conversions and brand new construction.
So 3 million square meters from converting offices and 3 million from building new purpose-built schools.
That's the split. Office-to-classroom conversions are apparently quite common internationally. The key is that they can be done quickly and cheaply. You're effectively repurposing those dead commercial assets for public good.
I have to inject some skepticism here. I mean, converting offices into housing is notoriously difficult. It's slow, you have complex planning, issues with light. Is it really realistic to think this can be done quickly and cheaply for schools, which have arguably even stricter safety standards?
That's where the policy is quite smart. It's not proposing these deep structural retrofits that housing often needs. It targets offices that already have large floor plates, good natural light, and decent ventilation structures. The conversion cost £1,200 per square meter reflects that light touch approach. It's focused on dividing space, installing washrooms, integrating safety features. That speed is crucial for meeting the capacity demand quickly.
Okay, that makes more sense. So let's talk numbers. Given all these different parts, mothballed schools, office conversions, new builds, what's the final sticker shock? What's the full capital cost for all 120,000 classrooms?
The estimates are quite precise. For the 3 million square meters of office conversions, at £1,200 per square meter, the cost is $3.6 billion. For the 3 million square meters of new school construction, estimated at £2,500 per square meter, that's £7.5 billion.
Wait a second, if you add that up, the total capital required to completely solve the classroom shortage for a generation, Natuo build or convert 120,000 classes is only around 11 to 12 billion pounds. That seems astonishingly low for such a massive national project.
It is. The return on investment is immense compared to the cost. To put that 11 to 12 billion figure in context for you, that's roughly equivalent to one single year of spending on HS2, back when that project was still mostly theoretical. By leveraging existing debt assets, the cost is controlled. It offers extraordinary value for money.
So once this huge strategic investment is complete, we have to make sure we don't end up back in another RAC crisis in 30 years. The whole estate will be about 6% larger. So that commitment to ongoing maintenance has to be just as ambitious, doesn't it?
It has to be. The sustainable, responsible maintenance and renewal budget needs to rise immediately to hit those engineering standards we mentioned. So somewhere between 10 and 12 billion every single year. This is that sensible Nordic-style approach where you view your infrastructure as a national asset that you have to actively manage.
And we also know that pupil numbers are projected to fall a bit by 2030. So once the capacity is built, the focus should shift from just endless expansion and more towards resilience.
Resilience is the key word. The reform calls for a dedicated future-proofing budget, integrated right into that maintenance plan. It allocates 1 to 1.5 billion per year just to address modern challenges.
And what sort of challenges does that budget cover?
We're talking about making sure the estate is ready for the 21st century. So that means climate adaptation, making schools resilient to heat waves and flooding. It means aggressive decarbonization programs. It means vital improvements to ventilation and air quality lessons we learned the hard way recently. And, ensuring digital infrastructure and flexible learning spaces are truly fit for purpose.
The key takeaway being, don't just build smart. This investment is meant to stop us from creating another generation of buildings that are doomed to crumble. Okay, let's unpack this and bring it all home. We've just done a deep dive into a blueprint for fundamentally modernizing the educational estate. It requires a 31% expansion in the workforce, creating, up to 330,000 new jobs. And on the property side, it solves a 120,000 classroom deficit by strategically using mothballed schools and vacant office space. And it achieves all of that for a surprisingly modest 11 to 12 billion pounds.
And we've seen that the investment creates immediate, quantifiable fiscal benefits, 4 to 4.5 billion hours a year, by dramatically cutting unemployment and boosting tax receipts. This whole plan is explicitly designed to be a driver of economic uplift.
So if the solution to better educational outcomes, smaller classes, newer facilities, is also the solution to generating mass stable employment and immediate fiscal returns, doesn't that fundamentally redefine whether we should see this as an expense or as a long overdue national investment?
It's a crucial distinction, and it leaves something for you to consider as you reflect on this deep dive. Which area of investment, is it staffing capacity or is it proactive estate maintenance, offers the greatest long-term resilience against the next big societal or economic shock?
A compelling question to close on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.